Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. And in today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election, and my current prediction for what the election would end up looking like if it were Ron DeSantis versus Joe Biden. Before we get into it, please like this video, please subscribe to the channel, please look at all the links in the description. I've got a Substack, Instagram, Twitter you can follow. Go do all those things, but for now, I think that's all I have to say. But yeah, let's get right into it here. So our safe Democratic states, or states for Brandon or Biden, whatever you want to call them, um, would be Washington. Whoops, that is not certainly not Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, in all likelihood, Hawaii. Um, Illinois would be right on the boundary between safe and likely. I'll put it as safe just so I don't arise any suspicion here. But yeah, um, all these New England states, Maine's first district, as well as DC. For DeSantis, he would have Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, except for that first district. Although, again, I do think that this first district, the second district is not characterized yet, but the first district could be close to likely. It's kind of like Illinois; it's right on the border, but I'll just keep it there. I mean, actually, it was likely in 2020. It'll probably be likely again. Um, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee. Uh, these southern states and West Virginia. And yeah, that's it. So 113 for DeSantis, 191 for Biden. And now, likely Democratic states. First state I want to characterize here is New Mexico. New Mexico could be interesting long term. There are some rural Hispanic areas the Republicans still have room to grow in, but also there are the suburbs of Albuquerque, the suburbs of Santa Fe have still plenty room for Democrats to improve. And I think Biden's not an awful enough incumbent to lose New Mexico, but I think he'd win it by a little less he did in 2020. Minnesota's another one. Minnesota's a state where the trends in the north are very, favorable to Republicans, but in the Twin Cities, which is where more than half the state lives, Democrats have been gaining. I think they're going to flip Anoka County in 2024. They're probably going to do very well. And I would expect Biden to win Minnesota by a similar amount as 2020. Virginia is up next. Virginia, I think Biden would improve on his margin for 2020, not because he's particularly strong in 2024 as compared to 2020, but it's because, again, he is someone who is decently, he's not very popular, but his approval is net 10 points better than it was 2 months ago, which is, worth something. And also Virginia is a state where the trends are really good for Democrats. New Hampshire's another one, another fairly left-trending, socially liberal state. Should be pretty solid for Biden, probably win it by 5 or 6 points, as well as Maine at large. And Nebraska 2nd District, he won it by like 7 in 2020. They changed it to be a Biden plus 6 seat, but it's left-trending, so he'd probably win it by a similar amount in 2024. For DeSantis, Alaska is the first one I'll take off the board here. I think it would be single digits. Again, Democrats have had a hot streak in Alaska as of late with Biden getting it just a 10-point margin in 2020. Then obviously Mary Peltola winning that special election, which is big for Democrats. So Alaska, I think, would stay Republican, but it would probably be by 7 or 8% as opposed to 10%. Kansas, too, falling below that 15-point threshold for likely and safe. South Carolina is another one. Wouldn't really be too contested, but I would see DeSantis winning it by under 15. And then I think Ohio's is and also Maine 2nd District. Ohio is, again, probably going to be double digits for the Republicans in 2024. Super right trending state. Super, there are a lot of rural areas where Republicans are just going to continue to grow in support. Cleveland as a whole is kind of trending red. It's losing population. Democrats aren't getting great numbers out of Cuyahoga County. Democrats will do better in the Cincinnati and Columbus metro areas, but it won't be enough to combat these right trends. But I do think my hot take is that I think Ohio will be trending. They'll start trending back towards Democrats in probably 20 years as the suburbs slowly take over the state. And then I believe that's it for our likely Republican states. Now, lean Democratic states here, I only see one, and that's Michigan. Michigan is a state where I think that Biden would win it by like 2%, maybe. It could be tilt, could be lean. It really depends on what how you're feeling. I guess I'll be cautious to put it as tilt, but it's certainly stronger for Biden than these other states. What I will say though is that I do believe that Joe Biden is going to outrun, or is going to get outrun by Gretchen Whitmer this year, despite the fact that 2022 will probably be a less favorable environment to Democrats nationally. But Whitmer's a really good incumbent. Michigan Democrats have a ton of money. They're running better candidates than the Republicans, and the Michigan GOP is just really bad. And so the fact that they have been completely incompetent since 2016, I think Biden would hold on to Michigan probably by about 2%, mostly because he continued doing well in the Detroit suburbs, Oakland, and Livingston County. But he'd probably lose a bit with working class voters as compared to 2020. Um, Now, for our lean Republican states, I think Texas would be first. Texas is trending rapidly to the left. In 2012, Romney won it by 17. 2016, Trump won it by I think 9.5, and then in 2020 he won it by 5. So it trended 7 points to the right between 2012 and 2016. That trended 5 points to the right between 2016 and 2020. Even if you think the trend is a lot smaller, it's only 2 or 3 points statewide, it would still be below 5%. And I would ultimately see DeSantis winning Texas by 3.5 if I had to guess as of right now. Florida would be another one, another big Sun Belt state going Republican. Florida went to Trump by 3%. It's trending to the right. DeSantis is the governor. He's going to win re-election by probably 7-8% this year. And he has a big base in Florida. And I really do see him as someone who can galvanize the vote there. And the only reason why I think it would be lean instead of likely, it would probably be DeSantis plus 4 or 5, so it would be close to likely. But the only reason why I think that it would be lean instead of likely is because Hispanics, for whatever reason, tend to be a lot more favorable to the incumbent than they were, 4 years prior. So Bush did like 18 points better with Hispanics in 2004 than he did in 2000. Obama, as we know, did a lot worse with every group in 2012 relative to 2008, but the only group he did better with, I think he did 7% better with Hispanics. Then in 2016, Trump only got 28% of the Hispanic vote, but in 2020, he spiked it and got up to 32%. Biden got, I think, 67% of Hispanic vote in 2020. I think you get a similar amount. Hispanics are trending right, but I don't think the collapse in Florida would be as big as some people are expecting. But again, I could see it being more than 5, but I'm just going to err on the side of caution, similar to what I did for Michigan. So just want to be consistent here. Finally, Wisconsin, super right trending state. I don't think DeSantis is that great of a candidate for the Rust Belt. I think he's a bit overrated in that regard. But what I will say is that DeSantis is someone who would, because of his culture war stuff, because of his social conservatism, be able to get out the base in Wisconsin. That's what matters for that state, because it's just getting rural, whiter, and more favorable to Republicans long term. So for our till Democratic states, we're going to do Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is Biden's home state. He did well there in 2020, all things considered. And the thing is, people are going to say the polls had Biden up by I think 4% in Pennsylvania on election day, and he only won by 1.2. So again, he ran behind the polls, but I think anyone really paying attention to the Pennsylvania polls would have known he was going to run behind. I think my final forecast had him winning it by 2, which is pretty close to what he ended up winning it by. And the thing with Biden is that because winning Pennsylvania came at the same time that Joe Torcella, and I'm forgetting who the other Democrat was, but Democrats lost Democrats got upset in the treasurer's race in Pennsylvania, and they also lost, I think, I think the auditor race to Tim DeFoor, and the only statewide race the only row office they held on to was the Attorney General office, which Josh Shapiro was able to maintain. But again, Josh Shapiro is a really good candidate for other reasons, and Democrats, the fact that they kind of collapsed in Pennsylvania in 2020 in their their row offices, with the exception of Shapiro, makes Biden's win a bit more impressive because he was able to get really good margins in the suburbs, whereas Torcella and the other person they ran against, Tim DeFoor, did not. So I think this is all, it's kind of a convoluted explanation, to be fair, but it's all really to say that Democrats, like Biden in Pennsylvania, actually did quite well, and I think him being from Pennsylvania helps him. The fact that he was able to appeal to the suburbs helps him, and I just don't see a ton of room left for Republicans to grow in some of these rural areas. Again, maybe in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre they'll do a little better, but they've kind of maxed out their the T area, which is again the area that goes kind of like up here, goes down over here. So Pennsylvania, I think, tilt Democratic. Tilt Republican states, we're going to go across here. Nevada and Arizona are the first two. These are states that I would see flipping to DeSantis. Nevada, I think DeSantis is a good candidate for the Las Vegas suburbs, because again, these are socially liberal areas, but the reason that they weren't really too high on Trump was mostly because of Trump's, I think, rhetoric. And yeah, DeSantis, I think, would be kind of called out as very extreme because of his policies in Florida, and I guess you can make that argument. But DeSantis' rhetoric is a bit less, I think, polarizing in the eyes of many than Trump. So DeSantis probably win Nevada. As for Arizona, I would see Biden actually doing pretty poorly in Arizona relative to expectations. Again, it's a state that's trending blue, and he could continue to grow in the suburbs. Something we also have to remember is that Hispanic voters likely would not turn out as much, because again, I think Biden would hold up his numbers with Hispanics, but I also don't think that they'd turn out as much as they did in 2020 in some cases. And Arizona is one of those. And then the city of Phoenix itself trended a little bit to the right in 2020. Not the suburbs, obviously, but the city of Phoenix itself. And DeSantis also has a lot of appeal to like just generic Republicans who didn't like Trump and think he'd win back Arizona. North Carolina is next up. North Carolina is a state where DeSantis, I think, would do very well in the research triangle relative to Trump. He has more appeal to suburbanites, especially in the South, because I think him being from one of the southernmost states in America helps him. And in 2018, despite it being a blue wave, he did very well in Jacksonville, very well in Tampa, very well in uh, God, I'm forgetting the name of the city. It's the one, Port St. Lucie and those bellwether counties, and that gives me enough reason to think he'd carry North Carolina, probably by a little less than Trump. But the fact that the black areas of the state are declining in population, and DeSantis being just a better candidate in general than Trump for the suburbs. Again, he's not amazing for the suburbs, but I think he's better than Trump. Would lead me to think that he would beat Biden in North Carolina in 2024. And then lastly, Georgia. This is a state that I've really had a lot of confliction with. It's to me, it's just really close, honestly. But I think for now I'm going to err on the side of, I guess, being a little more entertaining here, being a little more aggressive. And I'll say DeSantis takes it again. I think that something we've seen with Georgia is that Georgia will. Oh my God, Georgia. I don't know why. It's something in my throat. Sorry, Georgia will vote for Republicans that they don't deem to be super extreme. So, for example, on election day 2020, Purdue beat Ossoff by 1.8%. Again, he lost the runoff, but he won the E-Day vote by 1.8%. Trump lost it by 0.2. So Purdue ran 2% ahead of Trump. And that was Purdue's overperformance mostly came in the suburbs. And, he lost in the runoff, but he actually did better than Trump in a lot of the suburbs. The reason he lost the runoff was because rural turnout just, was really bad, and black turnout, was really good for Democrats. And so this year, I think we're going to see the most likely outcome is a Warnock-Kemp split, or Warnock wins the Senate race for the Democrats, but Kemp wins the governor's race for the Republicans. And that would, I think, again, most of Kemp's overperformance would come in the suburbs. And then in 2024, what we're seeing is that in a state like Arizona or in a state like Georgia, Trump would probably lose Georgia in 2024, as would, a more extreme candidate like a David Perdue or Herschel Walker. But DeSantis would do just enough to win enough suburban voters, get rural turnout to be, decently high. And I also don't think the black voters would be as mobilized to turn out against DeSantis as they would against Trump, because I think DeSantis has a higher approval rating on black voters than Trump does in Florida. And again, not to extrapolate there, but it's the best guess we can make. And Georgia, I think, would go for DeSantis by, I don't know, maybe 0.5% or something like that. So that would be my prediction for 2024 DeSantis versus Biden. I think DeSantis would narrowly win, but Georgia, I could easily see Georgia voted for Biden. I could see DeSantis winning Pennsylvania or Michigan. But yeah, that's where I stand as of right now. It's just really hard to win re-election as incumbent with a 44% approval rating. And again, I know Biden is rising. He's went from negative 20% to negative 9%. So I guess good for him. But at the same time, still not the most popular guy. Still has his own problems, and DeSantis is a decent candidate for the Republicans. So thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next one. Bye, guys.